Now, let's look at some other types of authority that we see women in the Bible. Maybe the key one is in the book of Judges, chapter 4. Many of you mentioned this last week that I didn't mention her, because she is a prophetess, but she's also described, and maybe chiefly described, as a judge. Now, you may know, probably do, that in the time of the judges, you know what, let's start in Deuteronomy 17, just to get a description of what we're looking at. Deuteronomy 17, and we'll come right back to Judges. Verse 8 says, if any case arises requiring decision between one kind of homicide and another, one kind of legal right and another, or one kind of assault and another, any case within your towns that's too difficult for you, then you shall arise and go up to the place the Lord your God will choose. And you shall come to the Levitical priest and to the judge who's in office in those days, and you shall consult them, and they shall declare to you the decision. Then you shall do according to what they declare to you from that place the Lord will choose. And you shall be careful to do all according that they direct to you, according to the instructions they give you, etc. This seems to be what's going on in the book of Judges, when God appoints these judges as really as militarily ruling and protecting and watching over the people in the time periods of the judges. There's this cycle that happens in the book of Judges where they sin, and then they ask for help, and then God sends a judge as a savior, and then there's some time of peace, and they sin again, and it's just over and over. But while the judges are alive, when the good judges are alive, there is indeed peace in Israel. And one of those judges, Judges chapter 4, was Deborah, the only one that was a woman, interestingly. The rest were all men, at least the ones that are listed. But Deborah is clearly a judge and seems to be one of the same order as the rest of the men. There's no distinction made about her femaleness, except for possibly one, which we'll look at. Deuteronomy chapter 4. We're going to jump around a bit. I thought about reading the whole 2 chapters, 4 and 5. You can do that later. We're not going to do that. Jump around a bit. Verse 4. Now Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel at that time. She used to sit under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and the people of Israel came up to her for judgment. She sent and summoned Barak, the son of Abinoam, from Kadesh Naphtali, and said to him, has not the Lord, the God of Israel, commanded you, go gather your men at Mount Tabor, taking 10,000 of the people of Naphtali and the people of Zebulun, and I will draw out Sisera, the enemy, the general of Jabin's army, to meet you by the river Kishon with his chariots and his troops, and I will give him into your hand. Hasn't God said that to you? Barak said to her, if you will go with me, I will go. But if you will not go with me, I will not go. Pause there and just catch what's going on here. Deborah, the judge, is talking to Barak, this military leader, perhaps almost king-like, right? He's the one in charge of this. That God has told Barak to do something, and he hasn't done it. And Deborah comes and says, don't you know that God has told you this? And then Barak responds, even after that, responds by saying, I'm not going unless you go. Okay, interesting. All right, jump down to verse 14. Deborah said to Barak, up, for this is the day in which the Lord has given Sisera into your hand. Does not the Lord go out before you? Constantly having to bring confidence to Barak, remind him that God is with him. So Barak went down from Mount Tabor with 10,000 men following him, and the Lord routed Sisera and all his chariots and all his army before Barak by the edge of the sword. I didn't read a part that's important earlier. Verse 9, after verse 8, after Barak says, if you go, I'll go. Verse 9, she said, I will go with you. Nevertheless, the road on which you are going will not lead to your glory. For the Lord will sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. You guys know this story probably, but we have this moment where Barak has an opportunity to be faithful, and instead he doesn't. He cowers in fear. So Deborah steps up and says, I will go with you, but because of your, doesn't say this in the text, but because of your lack of faith, you will not get the glory that you would have gotten otherwise. The glory that you get from war will not be yours, because Sisera, the enemy king, will be given into the hands of a woman instead of the hands of Barak, instead of the hands of you. Look down to verse 17. But Sisera fled away on foot to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, for there was peace between Jabin the king of Hazor and the house of Heber the Kenite. Verse 18. And Jael came out to meet Sisera and said to him, turn aside, my lord, turn aside to me, do not be afraid. So he turned aside to her into the tent, and she covered him with a rug. Turned aside is just lay down, basically. And he said to her, please give me a little water to drink, for I am thirsty. So she opened a skin of milk and gave him a drink and covered him. And he said to her, stand at the opening of the tent, and if any man comes and asks you, is anyone here, say no. But Jael, the wife of Heber, took a tent peg and took a hammer in her hand. Then she went softly to him and drove the peg into his temple until it went down into the ground while he was lying fast asleep from weariness. So he died. And then, we won't look at it, but in chapter 5, there's this song that is sung for many, many verses where Barak and Deborah are mentioned, but the hero of the song is Jael, this woman. She's the one who gets the glory. All of Israel singing about Jael when they could have been singing about Barak, but they weren't because of his faithlessness, and instead they're singing about Jael, singing her praises. Okay, so here's what we have. We have Deborah as the judge that people were going to arbitrate decisions. We have her as the one who is involved with military decisions. Now, the one exception I mentioned a minute ago is Deborah's the only judge who doesn't lead the army. That may be significant. She's the only female judge. She's also the only female judge that does not lead the army, at least without Barak saying, you've got to come with me. It doesn't give us any significance, but it's interesting nonetheless. But we have this woman who is a judge over Israel, who people are coming to her to arbitrate cases, who is very involved in the military goings-on of the people, and rebukes Barak when he is faithless. It's also interesting, an interesting point is that it's intended to be embarrassing to Barak that the glory is going to go to a woman instead of to him. That's at least interesting culturally. He says that she is saying, instead of the glory going to you, not only is it going to go to somebody else, it's going to go to a woman. It's going to go to Jael. Okay, so we have Deborah in a position of authority, some sort of leadership over Israel, and a clear one. All right, let's look at one more. 2 Samuel, go to the right a little bit. 2 Samuel chapter 20. A woman who's just called the wise woman. But I think maybe we can learn something from this little story. 2 Samuel chapter 20, starting in verse 16. So, a little background going in this, so we don't got to read the whole chapter. There's a guy named Sheba who's trying to overthrow King David, basically. He's rising up a rebellion against David. And so, David's men, David's leaders, Joab especially, is going after Sheba to go get him. And here's where we are. So he's going into where Sheba's city, and he's going to ransack the city. Verse 16. Then a wise woman called from the city. So this wise woman steps up to represent the city and says, listen, listen, tell Joab, come here that I may speak to you. And Joab came near her, and the woman said, are you Joab? He answered, I am. Then she said to him, listen to the words of your servant. And he answered, I am listening. Then she said, they used to say in former times, let them ask counsel at Abel, and so they settled the matter. I'm one of those who are peaceable and faithful in Israel. You seek to destroy a city that is a mother in Israel. Why will you swallow up the heritage of the Lord? Joab answered, far be it from me, far be it that I should swallow up or destroy. That's not true. But a man of the hill country of Ephraim called Sheba, the son of Bichri, has lifted up his hand against King David. Give up him alone, and I will withdraw from the city. And the woman said to Joab, behold, his head shall be thrown to you over the wall. Sweet old lady. Then the woman went to all the people in their wisdom, and they cut off the head of Sheba, the son of Bichri, and threw it out to Joab. And he blew the trumpet and dispersed the armies. Okay, so all I want to point out here is we have a woman representing one of the cities, one of the great strongholds in Israel. We have a woman that goes out as the representative. That's, I think, significant. A woman that goes out, is accepted and is talked to by Joab, is the one he communicates with to negotiate the deal for the head of that poor fella.